Hello and welcome to our guest interview on From the Ground Up. This show is partly sponsored by Divina Inc. For those of you that don't know, I'm Carmen Milagro and I'm an entrepreneurist. I'm a certified CBD consultant and professional master certified coach. I'm the author of The Truths About Hemp CBD, a guidebook for curious folks. And I'm the co founder of CBD University based out of Mexico. We all start somewhere. And usually, in whatever career you're in, most people start from the ground up. But regardless of where you start, the point is when you do start, how do you do it? How do you navigate changes and challenges and celebrate the wins? We're here to learn from the experts how they do it. My guests come from all walks of life, and we talk about a variety of topics: life, career, business, wellness advice, whatever comes up. And my guest today is a transformative global business leader and champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's the founder and CEO at Conectado Inc. He serves as chairman of the Hispanic Technology Council. He's on the board of directors for Blue Shield of California and Jack in the Box. He's the former CIO at Cisco Systems Inc., and his name is Guillermo Diaz Jr., also known as G. G began his career in technology with the U.S. Navy, where he received a military scholarship that led to his Bachelor of Science degree in business administration from Regis University in Colorado. He went on to hold various technology leadership positions with some of Silicon Valley's most respected companies, including Silicon Graphics, Ingram Micro, and Alza Corporation. He's also won multiple awards, actually too many to name here, but they do include Most Influential C-Suite Leader, Top Latino in C-Suite, and the Maestro Award for the Top Industry Leadership. Welcome, G. Welcome to From the Ground Up, and thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you. Wow, I need to hire you as my champion.
You
That
got
was
it.
awesome. Thank you
Oh,
for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
I thank you for. I know you're super busy as we went through the list of some of the things you do. So I really appreciate your time because I think, G, you and I have a lot in common. We're trying to, in a lot of different ways and by doing different things, we're trying to, sort of elevate opportunities for our community, for our young people, for our veterans, for our farm workers. And I really wanted to be able to showcase, some of the work that you've done and why you do it.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to sort of, I like to sort of start at the beginning with my guests, and if you could tell us a little bit of family history, where you're from, but also what's the greatest life lesson that you've learned from your family?
Yeah. So thanks for the question because I think it's one of the key tenets that I live by every day is always remember where you came from. Always remember where you came from to inspire where you're going. Because I think it's those lessons that we learn that we either learn we want to do them again or we never want to do them again.
Right.
And for me, it all started in my family is from Mexico. My dad was from Mexico City. My mom was actually born in Colorado. She was in southern Colorado in the Mexican camps there. So I was born in Pueblo, Colorado, and that's where I always every conversation I'm in, I talk about Pueblo, but I'm also from the east side of Pueblo, which was a little bit rough. I guess the east side of anywhere is kind of a little bit rougher than most places, but for me, it's started in east side of Pueblo, and um, I think that sort of for a couple of things, I would say that it really helped me um, grow as a person to be very family oriented. And the the way I think about community today, I think about community then. So my mom is one of 22 children.
Oh my.
So
That is
so
a community in itself.
talk about community, right? So that when they say, it's I'll come to it, but at Cisco Systems, we say that we built the human network. I said, well, it really actually started with my grandpa. My grandpa actually started the human network with his 22 kids. But
I
yeah,
see how you did that.
so my family is quite large. In fact, there was probably recently I still am, being introduced to my first cousins.
Sure.
I mean, they're just, there's so many of us, but that sense of community, that sense of like family, and is always, that's where it starts from with me. And my biggest lessons were remember where you came from, but it was also my father passed away when I was about a year and a half, and my brother was 4 months old.
Right,
Um, so we were, obviously my mom had to work, and my grandmother helped raise us until we were about 4 or 5, and then my stepfather came into the picture.
right.
But my grandmother was we were very close. She was kind of almost like, my mom. I had two moms,
Sure.
but but I always remember her. She always built this thing in my head that someone's going to do it. Why not you? Right? Someone's going to do this thing. Why not you?
That's
And
awesome.
and she saw something there in me that she's like, you're going to be somebody, and she always put that in my head. So
Right.
my grandmother was always my abuelita was my biggest champion,
Sure. That's
along with my mom.
wonderful.
But that was really that's kind of for me where it started. Big family, um, very very connected in Pueblo. People, we're just a community,
Yeah.
and luckily I was very outgoing, so I was a champion in the community there, and I'm still a champion in the community today.
Right. Right. Well, that's really beautiful, and I think that's one of the things that just like there's always that one deal that can change your life. I believe
Mhm.
also that you only need that one person. One person can
Mhm.
change your life with their words, with their support, with their love, with their actions, with their belief in you. And I think it's wonderful, when it is the family member, when it is the family unit and the community that does that. And I think that's how you and I met. We're trying to build
Yeah.
this and connect. We'll get to this also, to your latest project. But I'm curious too with sort of this idea of being the champion, being a leader in such a way where you want to bring others with you. Was that always a part of who you are, or was it like a specific moment in time? I heard there's a boot camp story in here somewhere.
Yeah, I think it really all, for me, I was always engaged in community somehow, and it started with sports for me, right? I was always in sports. One of the things that I did, probably the biggest impact in my life was I started martial arts when I was really young, and and by the time I was 12, 13 years old, I was a black belt, and I was teaching adults.
Uh-huh.
So I was already like, and so
A
that
leader.
sense but I didn't understand it probably
Sure.
at the time.
Sure.
Even though there were people like my grandma, like my mom, like my family, and the instructors there that saw something in me. But I was very always had to be part of like this community, or part of like, hey, I want to see people grow. I want to see people do well, and when they do well, like when the next one got the black belt, I was like the one like
Yeah.
probably dancing around the place showing off the black belt of the person that was
So
there,
just yeah.
or somebody did well in school, and I was always and I didn't know it at the time, right? You probably it probably was just one of those things that ultimately became a competency, but you just kind of was natural for me.
So it's
Uh,
inherent. It's just
it's
inherent.
kind of inherent, and it was
Yeah.
kind of inherent. But I used to teach adults when I was, a teenager,
Right.
and adults were looking up to me. And in the martial arts, you is very formal, so they're saying yes, sir, yes, and I'm like going, wow, I'm a sir, I'm only 14 years old.
Right.
But you kind of fast forward. We didn't have a lot of money to go to college. I did pretty well in school, um, but I did know based on my what my grandma always said is like you got to go out, you got to do something special in the world. But did know I was going to get a degree
Right.
because I would be the first in my immediate family that had one, and I knew that was a game changer for me. But we didn't have a lot of money to go to college, so I went to the Navy, and my mom supported me there. But the boot camp story, well, there's two. One is before I went to the Navy, I was going to go to the Air Force, and my mom was like, "Well, what kind of job were you going to do in the Air Force?" "Well, I'm going to be a jet engine mechanic." She's like, "What did the Navy say?" I said, "Well, there's this electronics, telecommunications, technology job over there." She says, "That's what you're going to do." And I'm like, "No, I'm going to go do this at the Air Force. I want to be a jet fighter pilot one day," which was not going to happen. But she says, "No, you're going to go to the Navy." So we fought back and forth, and then she threw the over my dead body, or you going to the Air Force? And it's like, how do you argue with your mom on something like that? So,
You made a
so, uh,
stand.
so she made a stand. Thank God I went to the Navy and learned about telecommunications and security, all the things that are now a thing, right? It was learning it back then.
Sure.
But so that's one story. But the other story, and really why I'm so passionate about, and like you, how do we bring up this next generation is is there were not a lot of people that look like me in
Mm.
technology, especially.
Right.
And when I remember when I was in boot camp, I was doing an inspection, and they asked me to take off my hat. So I took off my hat, and the company commander saw my hair was growing back because they shave your head when you're in the Navy.
Right.
And it was like he looked at me, and he says, how did they let a cholo like you in my Navy?
Oh,
And I was like, I was like so much like I just wanted to pull out some east side of Pueblo on him.
right.
I'm like, no, what would that do? That would just ruin my life.
Right.
But but what I learned from that was that was a defining moment for me. It
Sure.
was like I'm never gonna let anybody tell me what I can or cannot do. And it hit me so deeply. And I didn't again realize it till probably years later where that actually ignited a fuel in me, a fire
Right.
that said, I don't want anybody to ever have to feel like that, especially people that look like me.
Right.
I
Right.
don't ever want anybody to want to aspire to be something and try to get knocked down by being called by saying, how do they let a cholo like you in my workplace or my Navy or
Right.
whatever. And so I always felt like I had to show, yeah, again, maybe back to martial arts days, that I had to be some sort of an example or some sort of, um, yeah, I had to inspire myself, but hopefully that inspired others,
Sure.
especially those that were in technology. When I got out of the Navy and I landed in Alameda, California, that was my last base, um, Silicon Valley. So
Oh,
I was one, I didn't see anybody else that looked like me in technology.
right.
And again, I felt like, how am I the only one? So how do we grow others, and how can we make others feel like I felt? I don't want people to have to feel like that.
Sure.
And
And
so anyway, that's kind of those are the kind of boot camp
yeah,
stories.
sure.
But I think those all lead to why I'm so passionate about this community and seeing, others that do well and grow and prosper that look like us, right?
Right. Right. And do you think that that change has happened since you experienced this? I mean, I know that people, it is hard sometimes to hold back. People use derogatory comments. They use that as ammunition to a lot of times to bait us to make us react in the way that will confirm their bias,
Hmm.
right? Do you think that things have changed for people, for veterans, for Latinos in the tech industry? And has there been some movement forward?
I think there has, and I think part of it is probably the stuff, work that you're doing, probably work I'm doing. But I think I look at the Hispanic Technology Executive Council that I've now rolled off of the chair as of this year, but I've been part of the organization for the last 15 years,
Right.
and I remember the rooms that we were in
Mhm.
at that point. There were, our conferences were probably 25, 30 people, and now they're hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Right.
So, and I think part of that is being able to show and especially the group of leaders that had thought about these ideas back then are now, they inspired others to do that, and I happen to be one of them. But I was at our high tech event, which was my last sort of event in late November,
Mhm.
and the room was full, and it was hundreds and hundreds of people there. And I thought back and I told the story about how I remember there was only a few tables,
Right.
and now I'm looking at this room and I'm like, oh my God, this is like, am I dreaming, right? This is a dream for me to see all of you in this room.
Right.
And and I think back to that, and I go, yes, we have made progress. But if you look at the numbers, right, the numbers still aren't where they need to be.
Sure.
You and I have talked about this, but in Silicon Valley, the heart of tech, you have 40% of the K through 12 students in Silicon Valley are Latino, and there's a 500,000 unfilled tech jobs, yet there's only 4% representation in tech. And that 4% was 4% a decade ago. So even though we are making progress, the population is growing, so the demographic is growing. So relatively speaking, the numbers aren't they're maybe incrementalizing,
Sure.
but they're not exponential compared to the population growth.
Right.
So I think that yes, we've made progress, but there's still these underlying biases that we need to, and I think that in the last couple of years, it's gotten what we're starting to amplify.
Right.
I think this last year, based on things that I've done and you've done, things that big conference that I'm a part of called Latitude, things that are happening with, We Are Human. These kinds of things are really amplifying the voice of Latinas,
Right.
and but it's not. We need to really continue that amplification.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that we're also trying to do. You and I are part of a group, HLX Plus. We both had, some expectations and requirements before we jumped on board. What do you think? What do you expect to see with this new group? It's relatively new, right, in this region. And It'll be nationwide. And what do you hope that we'll be able to do within HLX Plus?
Well, again, if you go back to the that's to me that's kind of the how,
Mhm.
and the why is, there's 63 million Latinos in the U.S., right? You think about that, the why to me is that it's the second largest demographic in the United States. And I'm not saying this just because I'm Latino. I'm saying this because these are facts.
Right.
You know,
Those are the numbers.
these are the numbers. And I mentioned about the K through 12 students.
Right.
If you look at the last 3 years, if we haven't seen, like right now, the world has become more digital. The world
Right.
has become more technology aware,
Right. More
and
video. It's
more
become more
video.
video.
Now, the highest number of users on a proportional basis of technology happen to be Latinos. Again, not saying that because I'm Latino. I'm saying that because it's fact. Over indexed on gaming, streaming, social, but we're the users. We're just not the makers,
Right. Right.
right? So if we're the users and we know about the technology, how do we shift that to become more of the makers? Which is why I launched Conectado. But going back to those are the what I just mentioned are the why. The next decade, the workforce looks like more and more like us. So how do we make sure that we're preparing that workforce so that the numbers like California and Texas, I mentioned 40% Silicon Valley. In California, 56% of K through 12 students are Latino in California, and
Right.
in Texas it's 55. So the largest states are majority already.
Right.
So so we need to make sure that what we do in efforts like HLX Plus, like Latitude, like We Are Human and Hispanic Star, and etc.,
Right.
that we are really, really bringing up the community and we're putting the resources where the facts are, right? And
Right.
so we need to make sure that we're not just doing this just because, I want to show, G is like a, uh, he's out there, Latino for the, you know, as an example. I'm not doing that because I want to be an example. I'm doing this because I want to make sure that the next generation is prepared for and for this future, and that next generation happens to look more and more like us. So is it just for Latinos? No, it's for America.
Right.
America has to compete with other nations,
Oh,
and if we're going to have that sort of competition with other nations, we need to prepare the workforce, and that workforce looks like this,
right.
right?
Absolutely. I love what you said. I think I'm going to have to quote you on some of this. But also I think there's a mind shift, and I
Mhm.
haven't really um, found too many people that yet. And I think it's just sort of refining this conversation. But in my opinion, in my experience, we have to stop thinking of the work that we do through these nonprofits as, instead of charitable, I'd like to switch to the mindset of it's inevitable. It's
Mhm.
inevitable that all these organizations like HLX Plus and so forth, that this is our purpose, but we have to do this. Someone has to do this. And
Mhm.
I think by having these organizations that are willing to, disseminate information, educate. It's all boils down to, but it's also putting us out there. You are a member of some pretty important, board of directors. That's another area, right? There's so many different facets of what we need to accomplish and change. But
Mhm.
but I was wondering if you could also share with us why you specifically created Conectado.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm gonna show you something. I'm gonna
Okay.
step off just for
Okay.
two
We'll take
seconds.
a look at the jersey. I
Yeah.
wanted to see what jersey that is up there on the wall. Ah, okay. I thought you were coming back with a bottle of tequila or something.
What's that?
I thought you had like a bottle of tequila in your hand.
No, I want to show you
I was like,
something.
where is this going?
So this thing right here,
Oh,
there's a, it's like
it
an
looks like a
award.
helix almost.
Yeah. So there's three threads in here, right?
That's beautiful.
And when I one of the things that when I left Cisco and they gave me this award, and there's three threads. One is because I helped build the technology platforms at Cisco. So that's my competence.
Sure.
The second that they brought to my attention was I helped build diversity impact at Cisco,
Right.
which is culture
Sure.
and beyond. So at Cisco, and then how we leverage that in the broader community with high tech. But the third was how I reached out to the community. And so those three things they're sort of like intertwined,
Right.
right?
Communication, competence, and
So it's
culture.
competence, culture, and community,
Ah, okay.
right?
Missed one.
And those things, they when it was presented to me, said, "Gee, you brought all those things together. You are the multiplier effect." And
Mm,
I could, there had no words.
yeah.
But I already had been thinking on these lines for
Mhm.
Conectado, but all of these things are connected, right?
Right. Right.
And so if the thing that I said, when I leave wherever I go next, I want to leverage my competence, my culture, and my community, and I want to build that. So, but I still saw this issue that we were still 4% representation. If you look at boards,
Right. Right.
we're the second largest demographic, yet there's only 3% representation on boards. If you look at other demographics, and I very, and I applaud the Black community because they're
Mhm.
12% of the population and they're 16% of the board seats. So they're actually over-indexed on board seats. We're 20% and 3%. So there's a big challenge there. So my thing on how we look at this classroom, how we start at the classroom and we start to build, how do we build representation to the boardroom?
Right.
From the classroom to the boardroom
I love it.
is one of the things, and we talk a lot about this at high tech. How do we build more representation from classroom to boardroom, and how can I use these three levers to be able to do that? Well, I thought, well, could we do it in analog mode? You and I can go out and we can talk. We
Sure.
can try to build, we could be mentors to maybe tens, 20s, hundreds, but there's 63 million,
Yeah.
right? So how do we not just incrementalize, how do we exponentialize? The way I thought about that is we build a technology platform
Mhm.
using the technology to build in the diversity and representation, the culture, and to build that community.
Right.
And that's Conectado, right? How we make sure that we are accelerating opportunities for those that are underrepresented. And that's what we're doing here. And that those three threads are really the foundation for Conectado, but it's really leveraging that technology, especially
Yes.
that technology, because that's gonna create that exponential effect, right?
I love it. I love it. And as we're talking, my brain is like going into overload of, oh, I should talk to G about. There's two projects that I should definitely talk to you about, which is because you're right. It's the coaching and doing that one-on-one. There is a very special relationship that you develop, even
Mhm.
when you're doing, 50 people on Zoom. but yeah, it's not enough. We have to have that way of, and for example, I mean, I know that this one project that I'm working on, it's television is still the biggest
Mhm.
outreach,
That's right.
right, for platforms, and I'm working on something like that. So I definitely want to talk to you about that. And I
Yeah, and
think
and
there's just so much that we can do by amplifying what we're doing and then having others go forward and do that. I know you had a saying when you were in Cisco, inspirar, and wait, did I
uh,
say it? Hacia adelante, right?
mhm, mhm.
And what do you mean? Right.
Inspire forward, right?
Exactly. I think
Mhm.
if, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you've taken that what you were doing at Cisco and you've sort of broken off and now it's conectado and that's your focus.
Yeah, it's really taking all of, I mean, I say I grew up in in three, now four places. I grew up in Pueblo.
Hmm.
I grew up in the Navy.
Right.
I grew up at Cisco, and that's where that these three threads really came together.
Right.
Um, and I grew up at High Tech, which is how he really connected the community beyond Cisco.
Right.
Those were the four sort of grown up moments for me. Um, but I do think that uh, that how we meet the world where it's at. Think about the stats I mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
Well, guess what? If we're already gaming, if we're already streaming, if we're already socialing on the networks, then let's use it's kind of like martial arts.
Right.
Let's leverage the power of that with us, the
Right.
momentum.
Right.
So if we can get the users there, the 20% of the population who are mostly gamers, streamers, and social,
Right.
let's build something that is gaming, streaming, and social.
Right.
And that's what we're doing with Conectado.
Right.
It's a metaverse gaming type of platform that will connect this community, that will allow us to not only see things like avatars of Carmen, but also, hey, let's see her story.
Right.
Let's see her story in live motion.
Right.
Maybe she has a video that we want to see, or maybe we can connect out with her, via some calendar or Zoom on
Right.
a real live basis.
Right.
So
Exactly.
there's ways to connect with Carmen now that I haven't been able to before because I had to wait for her, you know,
The
several
book.
weeks or
Right.
months or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's not scalable. But
Exactly.
if I can go see her 24/7, and she's like, maybe answering me to the extent that she can
Right.
until I talk to her live,
Exactly.
she's inspired me now. Now I go, oh, I know enough to keep going. And
Right.
now I want to be, and 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 I can see somebody that looks like me.
Right.
I could see what I could
That's
be, right?
exactly. Exactly. And that's, those are the types of projects that get me really excited, that, that if I'm as old as I am, if I get inspired, if I get excited, imagine me 35 years ago looking
Hmm.
at what's happening now for us and looking at people that look like
Yeah,
us. So
yeah,
that's how I approach all of that, is as long as I'm living and breathing and I can help one person, if only one person is going to watch this interview, but they're inspired to just go do something,
yeah,
something special or something,
yeah,
even, it doesn't have to be extraordinary, just something to help themselves, to help their family, to help their community. To me, that's what excites me. And
yeah,
that's what, like, makes my heart
yeah.
filled with joy.
And I mean,
Um,
exactly. And I think, you know, I think that with the use of digital and technology, we will be able to take that cariño that we talk about, and we talk
right.
about if we can take one person there.
Yep,
But
yep,
guess what? That one person can now turn into 1 million people
exactly. Exactly.
by just the story, just the ability for us to
Mhm.
leverage the way the
Yes.
world is today.
Yes.
which is digital, which is technology, which is
Okay.
what we're good at. We can see it in our kids. We can
Well,
see it, right?
what you're good at.
Well, we
I could
are. I
barely
mean,
get us
we're
going
look,
on the
but here's the thing, Carmen. I mean, think about this 4 years ago.
right, right,
For you to go, hey, gee, why don't you get on StreamYard and we'll go do this and that. It's like, well, gee, maybe I can set up a meeting. We could come to my studio and we'll do the thing here.
right.
That was the conversation there, right?
Absolutely.
And now it's like, hey, can we could have done this like in, hey, gee, I want to do a streamer with you. Let's do it
Right,
tomorrow.
right.
We could have done that, or
Yeah,
we can do it like in an hour. But in analog mode, we
correct.
probably it would have taken us quite a long time to
Exactly.
set that up, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
we can do a lot of these things now pretty lickety split. And my mom's using FaceTime, and the 3-year-old kid is using
Right,
FaceTime or playing games, and they're like, my
right.
nephew's telling me how to set up the network, and it's like he's 8 years old, and it's like, you know, it's this is a different world, but
It is. It is.
but we need to be able to leverage that power
Absolutely.
with us, right?
I love it. I love it. And I know that, we're coming up on we could probably talk for hours, you and I,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I wanna be respectful of your time, but I also before we leave, I also would like to sort of switch gears. We've been talking about the work that we do, and you're passionate, but I also would love for the viewers and our listeners to kind of like learn a little bit about you. And this is sort of what I call the rapid fire section. I forgot to
Mhm.
tell you about this. Um,
Uh-oh.
and it's sort of just, I'm going to throw out one or two or three questions, and it's the first thing that comes to your mind, just sort of like, on the actor studio kind of vibe.
Okay.
Just no overthinking
All right.
it.
Let me try to get ready for this.
We'll see how it goes. Let's see. What's the one misconception that you think people have about you as a leader?
um, that I know everything.
Ah, okay.
That that I they you know I'm still learning,
Right.
right? And I think we're all continuous learners, but it's like, man, you must do everything. You've been everywhere. You do. It's like, no, I actually still have a lot of learning to do. So I think it's um that I that because I've been in so many situations, I think there's this notion that I know probably more. Maybe it's the way I come across, but I know more than I actually do.
Well, and then we just leverage that, right? And we figure it out
Yeah.
as we go
Maybe
along.
I don't know. Maybe it's the misconception is they don't I they think I know. Not that they think I know everything, but they probably think I know more than I actually do
Right.
know.
All right. That's very good. I like that. Okay. How about question number two? What is what is your definition of happiness?
Um, my definition of happiness is is seeing others succeed. I mean, I love to succeed,
Yes.
um, but what really like just brings my throat to choke and my ears to or my eyes to water is when I see especially somebody that I remember what who I was
Right.
that is now succeeding,
Yeah.
and and that makes me happy. People say,
Yeah.
"Oh, wait, you're in a really good place in your life. What if you won the lottery, what would you do? What would you buy first?" And I said, "I would go and put a bunch of scholarships out there." And
Right.
they're like, "Really?" And it's like, "Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I would do."
Well,
Um,
and yeah, that's what happens when you are walking the walk and talking the talk. There's a
mhm,
lot of people that pay a lot of lip service, as
mhm,
we know, and I think it's I do believe in the concept of like attracts like. And I think that's
Hmm.
why we come together. That's why I got to meet you and
Yeah.
getting to know you even more. I've got one more question, G,
Okay.
before I let you go. And I think everyone is probably curious, like, what is your shirt all about?
My shirt is
I
all
love it.
about.
I can see part of it.
Yeah. So yeah, let me stand up a little bit. It's a little
Ah,
calavera on a
love
skateboard
it.
here. Um, but it's it's so I know we want to leave, but this is something that's really important for me is that I don't lose my identity as a Latino, as a Mexicano, as someone from Pueblo, Colorado. I always talk about being El Chingon or something like that. And, you know, obviously I did well in my business career. Um, but I also made sure that I never lost who I was. I always remember where I came from. And yes, I had to, you know, present myself well and look, kind of the part
Right.
in those sessions. Um, but everybody knew that I was a leader
Mhm.
that happened to be Latino
Exactly.
because I never ever lost that. And
Right.
I never want anybody to have to feel a lot of the things I've felt over many years
Right.
um, about being who they are.
Right.
And so, this is why I wore this shirt, wanted to represent
I love
my,
it. Thank you.
uh,
Well,
but
it's art and it's
oh,
color,
and my hat. Look at my
right?
hat.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, I love that. Oh, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
It's turned into fashion moment with Guillermo Diaz Jr.
Well, I had to kind of, being on your show, I had to do, come up with something.
Thank you so much, G. Before I do let you go, I know you've got a ton of things, but how can people support you and support Conectado? How do they get into that place where they can connect with you?
Yeah. So I think first go to Conectado, Conectado, Conectado.com, and you will see sort of some of the work that we're doing there, and then and the mission. We're very mission oriented. In there, you'll be able to um, add your credentials, your email, etc., to be in touch. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn profile. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. But if not, reach out to me directly. It's simple. G, like letter G, at conectado.com.
Okay, great. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Do you have any last words for our viewers and our listeners? Just that G nugget before we
I,
sign
I,
off
I
with you.
actually have two.
Okay,
One is always remember where you came from to inspire where you're going.
love it. I love it.
And that someone is going to do that job, that degree, that activity. Someone is going to do it. Why not you? Why
Thank
not
you
you?
so much. Thank you, G. On that, we're going to let you go. Thank you for your time. Thank you for
Thank you.
spending this 45 minutes with me. And it's just, I love doing these so much. And I hope that everyone will reach out to you at conectado.com. And we'll have to do another interview, I think, G.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love
Thank you
to.
so much.
All
Thank you
right.
for everything, G. Thank you.
All right.
And thank you all for staying with us today. As you know, I do believe in trying to share as much positivity, positive guests, positive examples. And I don't think we could get any more positive today than we did with Mr. Guillermo Diaz Jr. from conectado.com. I encourage everyone, wherever you are in life, whatever step you're at in your career, in your life path, I think one of the best things we can do for ourselves is to build or become a part of the community, whatever that looks like for you. So that's my 2 cents for today. I've said before, transformational success starts from finding the truth for yourself, building it from the ground up and the inside out. And anyone can do that. You are not alone. So hopefully you have been inspired in some way, and we hope to see you again soon. This is Carmen Milagro. I wish you good fortune, good education, and a good sense of self. And best of all, I wish you love and grace in your life. There's no reason why you can't lead with your heart and be successful and thrive in your world in the way that you see it. Again, I'm Carmen Milagro. This is From the Ground Up. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.